Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, you see him? He's laying down. You see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And still I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a senator.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look. There he is.
Because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people. Criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
You went right on the roof again.
You don't mind if I go up to the roof? Because he's on the roof, just to see you try and explain.
If you want to really see something that's take a look what happened.
Record.
Get down. Fuck down.
Dude, we just hit shots of fire.
Hold, when you're ready, on you. Move!
There's just shots fired. It was crazy. Oh my god. Holy shit. Oh my gosh.
I got you. Get my shoes.
To assassinate the president of the United States.
It's more Reagan.
Holy shit, I got chills.
I know, dude.
This is crazy.
Freaking fireworks.
I was wondering why those windows were open.
Oh my god, they are. They're open. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there? All right, so if you go to that window that's open and yell for Greg, that's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book back down and then lost sight of him. Okay. He would be right inside that window. He's the one that physically seen this, sent the pictures, and called it out. Okay.
2 days after the shooting, which killed Corey Comperatore and wounded 2 others in the crowd, ABC News aired an interview with Secret Service Director Cheadle.
Who is most responsible for this happening?
What I would say is that the Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the former president.
So the buck stops with you?
The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service.
Should that roof have been secure, period?
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, you know, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof.
Many have pointed out that the roof was not very steep and that there was a greater slope on the roofs where the Secret Service snipers were positioned behind Trump. This excuse is obviously ridiculous, and it's no wonder she didn't last long as director after this.
And so, you know, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
Cheadle says the Secret Service was responsible for the inner perimeter of the rally, where Trump was, but local police were responsible for the outer perimeter, where the gunman was located.
Many were outraged by Cheadle seemingly throwing the local forces under the bus, but there's plenty of blame to go around. And given that all congressional investigations seem to be focused on the Secret Service, it's worthwhile to also look at the ESU snipers who were stationed behind the shooter and other local law enforcement. The day before this interview, the Washington Post wrote the following. Among the questions agency officials are seeking to answer, according to a senior official, is whether the agency suffered a critical breakdown in communications with local police in Butler, Pennsylvania, who were assigned to secure the outer perimeter where the gunman positioned himself on the roof of a nearby building. Lawmakers in both parties are calling on Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle to account for decisions that may have left key responsibilities to local authorities, and law enforcement officials and experts are expressing shock at what they say is an obvious failure by the agency to plan for a Trump rally in a period of rising national polarization. Responding to questions from the Post, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi confirmed Sunday that the agency relied on local police at the Trump rally to fill out significant parts of its typical array of specialized protective units. 2 Secret Service counter-sniper teams were on the scene, but 2 additional teams that had been recommended for adequate protection at the rally were staffed by local units, he said.
You said that local law enforcement was responsible for that building. What did you mean by that?
So Secret Service respects local law enforcement, and we could not do our job either investigatively or on our protective mission without them. At that particular site, we divided up areas of responsibility, but the Secret Service is solely responsible for the design and the implementation and the execution of the site. And that's what I was trying to stress, was that we just divided up areas of responsibility, and they provided support to those areas of responsibility.
On the same day as this interview, the New York Times wrote, the Secret Service had determined that the entire warehouse complex should be outside its most secure perimeter and thus delegated to local law enforcement to sweep and secure. And 2 days later, the BBC wrote, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said that his agency was responsible for securing inside the perimeter of the fairgrounds, while local police secured the area outside, which included the private building used by the gunman. The local sheriff's department referred BBC questions to the state police, which said it was not responsible for the area containing the building. Butler County Sheriff Michael Sloop admitted there had been a failure in securing the premises, but said he believed that there was no single party to blame.
The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together. When I rose, surrounded by Secret Service, the crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great, great sorrow. I could see that on their faces as I looked out. They didn't know I was looking out. They thought it was over. But I could see it, and I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." Once my clenched fist went up, and it was high into the air, you've all seen that, the crowd realized I was okay and roared with pride for our country like no crowd I have ever heard before. Tragically, the shooter claimed the life of one of our fellow Americans, Corey, Comperatore, unbelievable person, everybody tells me. Unbelievable. And seriously wounded, 2 other great warriors, spoke to them today, David Dutch and James Copenhaver, 2 great people. They came for a great rally. They were serious Trumpsters, I want to tell you. They were serious Trumpsters, and still are. But Corey, unfortunately, we have to use the past tense. He was incredible. He was a highly respected former fire chief, respected by everybody. Was accompanied by his wife, Helen, incredible woman. I spoke to her today, devastated, and 2 precious daughters. He lost his life selflessly acting as a human shield to protect them from flying bullets. He went right over the top of them and was hit. What a fine man he was. So now I ask that we observe a moment of silence in honor of our friend Corey.
A community in mourning. Dozens of fire trucks formed a procession through Freeport, Pennsylvania to honor 50-year-old Corey Comperatore. His wife and 2 daughters were among the mourners.
We now know that local police not only were inside the AGR complex, but also inside a 2-story building with windows facing the roof the shooter got onto. We've learned a local sniper team was in a 2-story building attached to where Crooks was. You can see where the windows are above the roof level where Crooks was. CBS News reported a local tactical team spotted Crooks from those windows and snapped a picture.
Senator Ron Johnson released a 13-page report which included the following information about Beaver County ESU sniper Greg Nicol, who was referred to as AGR Sniper 1. He spotted the shooter, Thomas Crooks, from a 2nd-story window at 5:10 p.m. and took photos of him at 5:14. At 5:28, he took a photo of a bike and backpack from another side of the building. He saw Crooks again at 5:32, this time holding a rangefinder, and sent the photos to other snipers in a group chat. Secret Service was informed of the messages before Trump took the stage at 6:02.
No one told you not to take the stage?
No, nobody mentioned it. Nobody said there was a problem.
At 6:05, Nicol communicated that Crooks was moving northeast, now with a backpack. It was later revealed that Crooks was moving to climb onto a roof around this time, and Nicol's message was at 6:02. All this seemed to confirm earlier reports that snipers in the building had seen Crooks 3 times before the shooting. The next section is of particular interest and will be quoted in full. 6:06 to 6:12 p.m. AGR Sniper 1 goes to ground floor of the building to meet local law enforcement patrol to alert them to Crooks' presence. It's odd that Nicol would leave his post on the 2nd floor to physically meet with local law enforcement, and this story would evolve over time.
How did somebody get on that roof, and why wasn't he reported? Because people saw that he was on the roof. And you had Trumpers screaming. The woman in the red shirt, she was screaming, "There's a man on the roof." So you would have thought somebody would have done something about it.
Crooks fired at Donald Trump at 6:11 from a position 50 yards from where Nicol took photos from an hour earlier. Nicol can be seen exiting the building Crooks was on at 6:13. On July 22, the Secret Service director testified before Congress. It was mostly a waste of time, with the director providing barely any information and the politicians providing mostly theatrics. She resigned the following day.
Director Cheadle, the American people are watching, and they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So, Director Cheadle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Okay, would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political, yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman, I want to.
Come on.
We have to maintain decorum in this committee.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers.
Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because is it your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. We recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope, I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Members of the House Committee on Homeland Security visited the site the same day.
The assassination attempt of President Trump took place. The body was found right here behind us. And the far window, if you see my finger, the far window is supposedly, according to the owner of the building, is where the counter sniper team was. We were just in that room just a minute ago.
Behind me, you see the windows that Secret Service was supposedly in the second floor of this building behind. Makes you wonder why they weren't able to quickly dispatch the individual.
Although it was ESU snipers from Beaver and Butler counties stationed in that building, and not the Secret Service, it is a wonder why none of them were able to stop the shooter in time. Eli Crane also posted the following video from a window with a view of the shooter's position. This is the same window pointed out by Nicol's Beaver County ESU colleague Rich Gianvito after the
so
shooting.
If you go to that window that's open and yell for Greg.
As soon as officers arrived on this roof, a call prompted someone to stick their head out the window and look over. It's a shame they didn't do this before the shooting. The New York Times was quick to claim these snipers were unable to see the shooter. This article uses 3D modelling to recreate the lines of sight for 3 counter-sniper teams. The 2 Secret Service teams on the barns behind Trump and the ESU team behind the shooter. The Hercules 2 team on the north barn were looking in the shooter's direction from the moment they set up around an hour before the shooting, but he was somewhat obscured by a tree. The second Secret Service counter-sniper team, Hercules 1, was positioned on the roof of a barn farther to the south and west. It had been monitoring a different area, initially facing away from the gunman, videos posted to social media show. Video footage shows the counter-snipers later turning toward the gunman's direction 1 minute and 35 seconds before the first shot was fired. This is the view they would have had when they turned around. They killed the shooter about 16 seconds after he began firing. And now we get to the snipers behind the shooter. A third group of 3 law enforcement counter-snipers was stationed in the same warehouse complex as the gunman, but in an adjacent building, according to a local law enforcement official who was not authorised to comment. The building that the counter-snipers were in did have windows facing the side of the roof of the building that Mr. Crooks climbed up, but it is not known whether they were assigned to any of those windows that day. Whether they were assigned to these windows or not, they sure had access to them, and could have moved to them if needed. The law enforcement official said the counter-snipers, who were tasked with watching over the crowds, were positioned on the other side of the building, at the second floor windows further from the gunman, and closer to the people calling out. Here is what the view of one counter-sniper, facing those attending the rally, might have looked like. From this view inside the building, the gunman would have been out of the counter-sniper's lines of sight. This shot is likely taken from this window. The New York Times flew a drone over the site and used the footage to make a large 3D model. They could then place the virtual camera anywhere inside this model, meaning they could very easily move the virtual camera right up to the window, to the right of the window, or even just outside the window, and look to the left and show whether or not the shooter could be seen from there, but for some reason they chose not to do so. Edward Lenz from Butler ESU would later claim the snipers were also tasked with providing overwatch of the stage, even though it was hard to see from here due to a large combine placed in the way. Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner Christopher Parris testified before this committee that he was told Butler County ESU was responsible for securing the AGR building, and that 2 snipers left their position on the second floor.
The AGR building, Did your guys on the ground there ever voice concerns to the Secret Service for not putting somebody on that building?
So I suppose the best sequence of events that I can give you is that PSP was notified by email on July 5th about this event. There was an initial planning meeting where we had commanders present on Monday, July 8th. The final walkthrough occurred on the 11th. Our area commander asked specifically who was responsible for the AGR building, and we were told that Butler ESU was responsible for that area by several Secret Service agents on that walkthrough.
Okay. All right.
Colonel Paris, are you aware whether any law enforcement officer or officers was or were posted in the second floor window of the AGR building?
To my knowledge, there were 2 posted there from Butler ESU.
Did they remain on post?
I was told that at a certain point they began searching along with other local officers in the immediacy after Crooks had been identified as suspicious by them.
If I understand correctly, this is from the second story window of the AGR building. You can see that window comes out from the sash and swings out to the right. There's an aerial photo right after Crooks was killed where Crooks's body's on the roof, and that window was open.
I don't know that particular window, but my understanding is from a second story window is where he was initially spotted.
Okay, so are you then saying that, to your knowledge, those ESU officers left the location where they could look out the window to go in search of this person?
That is my understanding.
From that X is where the shooter was shared with us. His body was found. That window has this view where they could clearly, those ESU officers that were stationed, given access by the property owner to that window, could see the shooter. Had they stayed in that man position, they could have taken him out from this location. Did the Secret Service plan not include directives from staying in those positions?
I don't know, sir.
You don't know. Why weren't they able to immediately call their supervisor, who would then be authorized to issue a hold on the asset or a get him off the stage call?
That afternoon, Butler County DA Richard Goldinger texted the following in a group chat. From New York Times, the PA State Police basically pointed blame at the Butler ESU before Congress. That's the headline. Needs an on-record response. How do I respond to this, guys? I need to reply, but I don't want to say something wrong. Butler ESU Commander Edward Lenz replied, "Cool, we will brief you for sure. We have to put something out." The next day, Goldinger put out the following. Approximately 20 minutes prior to the shooting, members of the Butler County and Beaver County ESU teams were posted to a building in the AGR complex. In the course of performing their assigned sniper duties, they observed a suspicious individual seated outside the building. They took a photo of him and circulated the photo and the fact there was a suspicious person on the grounds of AGR to other ESU members. The photos were taken 57 minutes before the shooting and only passed on 33 minutes before the shooting, allegedly after Crooks returned with the rangefinder. This information was then passed on to the Command Center for the Secret Service and the Pennsylvania State Police. At some point, the suspicious individual, now identified as the shooter, Thomas Crooks, moved from his location toward the other side of the building. Both ESU officers moved within the building, attempting to keep eyes on Crooks. One of the officers observed Crooks sitting on a picnic table at the front of the building from his location on the second floor of the building. Crooks then ran off, carrying a backpack. At this point, that officer ran out of the building, attempting to keep eyes on Crooks until other law enforcement arrived. The other officer remained in the building on the second floor. The officer who ran out of the building could not locate Crooks, and he returned to the building. Both officers then heard shots fired. For clarification, neither officer left their post, as was testified at the hearing on July 23. Their post was the building. While one of the officers did leave the building briefly, it was in response to a suspicious person who had not encountered law enforcement despite them notifying other law enforcement of the suspicious person. Even so, that officer returned to the post and the post was never left vacant as the other officer remained in the building. Further, neither officer could see Crooks on the other building due to the visual angle they had from their location to Crooks's location. To say that these officers left their post is a misstatement. When asked about the DA's statement, a spokesperson for the Pennsylvania State Police said the agency stands by Paris's testimony.
Tonight, brand new details about where local law enforcement was minutes before gunfire rang out at the Trump rally.
Behind this fence here on that roof, that's where Thomas Crooks was when he shot the former president. And Donald Trump was on a stage about 150 yards away, right over there where you see that red barn. Now, back over this way, the DA tells me that 2 local snipers were stationed on the second floor of that building next door in that second and third window. That's where the snipers were when they saw Crooks on the ground here in the corner of the building before the shooting. And the Butler DA tells me that something different than what we heard from state police yesterday.
The misinformation would be that they left the post. I mean, the way the testimony came out, it sounded like these guys left their post. They weren't following their duties, and that perhaps they could have stopped this, and that's just simply not true.
Channel 11 spoke exclusively with the Butler County District Attorney Rich Goldinger. He reached out to us because he said what was stated in yesterday's Homeland Security Committee hearing in Washington, D.C. is not completely accurate.
One of the ESU members observed him sitting on a picnic table outside of the building holding a backpack. And when the officer saw this and then Crooks went running, that is when the officer ran downstairs, went outside of the building to try and locate Crooks, because nobody had responded at this point to check into this suspicious person, and he wanted to keep eyes on him. So when he went down, he couldn't locate him. I don't know how long he looked, but he went back inside the building, and that's when they heard the shots.
Yesterday, lawmakers suggested if the local snipers did not leave their post, they would have seen Crooks climbing on the roof, but the DA said that's not the case.
It's my understanding they would have literally had to have leaned out the window and looked over to their left to be able to see him. But the windows were not open.
Goldinger said the 2 officers put their lives on the line and shouldn't be blamed.
When the officers hear that information, and that's why I'm coming forward to respond to it, that they're upset about it. You know, they did what they were asked to do, and now they're being accused of not doing that. I don't think we should be finger pointing at this point. Let's figure out where the mistakes occurred so we can prevent this the next time. You know, we were going in there as a team, so let's come out of it as a team.
The Pennsylvania State Police Colonel, he testified yesterday and said that they left.
Right, he's wrong.
He's wrong about that.
He's wrong about that.
Because he said that when they spotted him, that they left to go look for him, and that's why the roof wasn't covered.
No, that's not true. They stayed where they were. They could not see where he was located when he was on the roof. Their vantage point was they would literally had to have been leaning out the window looking over to where he was located. But they were still where they were supposed to be. And they couldn't find him. He had walked around the building and they had called it in. So they didn't leave their posts. I don't know why he said that.
Yeah, it's our understanding that they were on a second floor looking out a window.
Correct.
Why weren't they on the roof?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. That would not. They would have been where they were told to be. So I don't know why they weren't on the roof, but they were supposed to be in that second floor at those windows.
Are you surprised that the Secret Service put local law enforcement in charge of a building so close to the former president, so close with direct line of sight, essentially?
Well, no, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't say that they were actually in charge of that building. I would just say that that's where they were supposed to be to observe a specific area within the venue to see if there was anything that was going to occur. So, in my opinion, the Secret Service is in charge of all of the location, inside and outside of the venue, to make sure that it's secure.
Senator Chuck Grassley released multiple redacted ESU documents on July 29. A detailed plan from Butler County showed sniper positions in the AGR building. Another document showed coverage areas from 3 positions in the building, which do not include where Crooks fired from. This document also includes pictures from the only position from which the roof was not visible. Text messages from a group chat between ESU snipers from Butler, Beaver and Washington counties showed Nicol sending his photos of Crooks at 5:38 along with a message. Nicol also messaged a Beaver ESU group chat with the photos shortly after. An after-action report from Beaver County included the Crooks photos along with the location, as well as the bike and backpack photos in location. The bike turned out to be unrelated to Crooks. It also included a timeline of events similar to the one Senator Ron Johnson provided earlier. This report also places Nicol's 6:02 communication about Crooks moving northeast towards Sheets at 6:05 and specifies he was at a picnic table. Sheets is to the northeast, but is not accessible via the path Crooks took. It also specifies that the Butler sniper stayed in position while Nicol went downstairs to the building Crooks would fire from, noted as Building 1, to meet patrol to let them know suspect is around building on side of Fairgrounds. It puts the time of shooting at 6:12 and indicates Nicol was all the way back in Building 4 at this time. Remember, he can be seen exiting Building 1 at 6:13. It says Vasiliotis Nicol, who is an ESU medic and the wife of Greg Nicol, and Gianvito accessed the roof at 6:23, when in reality it was 6:29. It shows Greg Nicol back in his position at 6:25. The same day all of these documents were released, ABC News aired an interview with members of the Beaver County ESU.
And good morning to you, George. This Pennsylvania SWAT team took up positions in defense of the former president at his rally. They saw the shooter first, recognized him as suspicious, and took steps they thought would have prevented the attempted assassination. Now they're living with failure. Text messages between local snipers show they noticed Thomas Matthew Crooks at 4:26 p.m., nearly 2 hours before the attempted assassination that would injure Trump, kill a man, and severely hurt 2 others. "You see me go out with my rifle," one of the snipers texted, "so he knows you guys are up there."
These messages were sent by the sniper who left the second floor around 2 hours before the shooting. Although he confirmed to the New York Times that the person he saw was Crooks, other footage shows him somewhere else at this time. The FBI and Senator Grassley have since stated that the person he saw was not Crooks.
By 5:14 p.m., they grew suspicious.
This footage of Crooks was taken at 5:06, 8 minutes before Nicol took a photo of him from the second floor.
This is no trespassing. Oh,
sorry, we didn't see any signs.
A few minutes before and after that footage, a man with an AGR cap who apparently works there was filmed clearing people away from the same area.
This guy's kicking everybody out.
This was filmed just after Nicol first noticed Crooks at 5:10 and 3 minutes before he took a photo of him on the ledge just out of view to the left.
He was looking up and down the building and just wandering around, and it just seemed out of place.
Greg Nicol snapped these photos of the shooter.
We had a text group between the local snipers that were on scene. I had sent those pictures out to that group and advised them of what I noticed and what I'd seen.
What do you think is transpiring once you send in what you've sent in?
I assumed that there would be somebody coming out to, speak with this individual or, find out what's going on.
None of the concerns appears to have reached members of Trump's Secret Service detail. The Washington Post reports they've complained they were never made aware of the warnings.
The segment then moves on to try and paint some ESU members as heroes for arriving on the roof by falsely suggesting they rushed onto it without knowing the shooter was down.
Members of the Beaver County SWAT team rushed to the shooter's rooftop.
There's a ladder right here.
As seen in footage from Rich Gianvito's helmet camera.
Thanks, brother. Yep.
So we had access through that ladder, got up onto the roof.
And as you're scrambling onto that roof, you don't know for sure whether he's dead or alive, or whether you'll encounter fire.
At that point, no.
As mentioned earlier, Gianvito climbed onto the roof at 6:29. Others had arrived at Crooks' dead body 12 minutes beforehand.
So what are you prepared? Are you prepared for a firefight at that point?
Well, we're prepared for anything at that point because at this time we're unsure.
Give me a solid perimeter. Get guys prepped to clear the building.
He encountered the shooter's bloodied body some 400 feet from the stage.
And some 18 minutes after the threat was neutralized. You can see him casually walking towards the roof while others were already up there.
We're clear.
Let's rewind a few seconds and show what ABC News didn't. This was 17 minutes before Gianvito climbed onto the roof.
Are we good? Shooter's down. Are we good to move? We're clear. Let's move.
The team believes it did everything it could have to thwart the attack, but accepts its share of failure.
I think we all failed that day.
How so?
Life was lost.
Yeah. People died. And if there's anything that we could have done to stop that, we should have done.
ABC News also published an article about the interview which did address Nicol leaving his post, and even the people shouting about someone being on the roof. Nicol moved through the building trying to shadow Crooks, who was outside, and keep eyes on him. But Nicol lost sight of Crooks as Nicol made his way down to the building's first level. By that time, Trump had taken the stage, Nicol said. Then, as the former president began speaking, Nicol noticed rallygoers looking away from the podium, up towards the roof of the AGR building. Some were shouting that there was someone up there. Nicol said he was almost relieved, thinking to himself, "Oh, they must have found this guy we were looking for out there, and everybody's watching the police deal with him." He would soon discover that wasn't the case. "That's when I heard the gunshots," Nicol said. Crooks had opened fire on the campaign rally. The article doesn't mention that the window Nicol took photos from earlier was visible from Crooks' final position. The people shouting about someone on the roof were near this tree. Nicol didn't radio his partner about the shouts. Wood said he didn't know if the spot they were assigned to was the best one. Prioli said they got their marching orders from Butler County. Nicol was later asked by the task force why they agreed to this interview, and he said it was the DA's decision, likely from Beaver County, to respond to Colonel Parris's testimony. The following day, Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe appeared before a Senate committee. His written testimony mentioned that the team leader of the Secret Service counter-sniper team was notified about Crooks around 15 minutes before Trump was allowed to take the stage. He was informed that Crooks was aiming a rangefinder in their direction and warned his team of someone lurking around the AGR building.
What is the purpose of a rangefinder? And once this assassin was identified as using a rangefinder, wasn't that proof positive that he was a dangerous individual?
So I'll say, Senator, that obviously somebody is trying to determine where they are in proximity
to a target,
to a location, a fixed location.
That sounds better.
I'll defer to my colleague here, but I believe it was a recreation or sports related. I thought I had read that it was a golf range finder. Nonetheless, it still would have provided him the ability to provide the distance that he was away from his intended target.
Oh, so close.
Wasn't that enough?
As far as raising suspicion?
Yes.
I think he was identified as being suspicious by local law enforcement.
And nothing happened?
Well, I know that local law enforcement was attempting to locate him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Help us understand the communication that either was or was not happening directly with the president, former president's detail, to make the call to delay while this was being investigated.
Having information of a suspicious individual. There were other calls that day of individuals that came to the attention of law enforcement, of people that needed medical attention. So it really, that particular regarding the assailant, that never really rose to a level of we should not put him out there. Had we known that there was a dangerous individual out there, we would never let a protectee go out on stage.
Rowe also made some fairly explosive comments about the building Crooks fired from.
Director Rowe, in your testimony here today, as well as in your written testimony, you said very, very clearly that you can't defend why that building with the shooter on top of it was not better covered. You were very clear. You cannot defend that. So my question to you is, my understanding is that there's a detailed site survey that is done prior to an event to identify potential threat points. So talk to me about that site survey. I'm sure you've had a chance to look at it now after action. And how did that site survey get approved when it was so clear that that was a major threat from that building?
Thank you, Senator. So our Pittsburgh field office did the advance. During that advance, not only were they discussing amongst themselves about mitigating the line of sight, but also they were discussing with other agencies that were supporting it. Our counter snipers met with their counterparts. The team lead and team lead met. They walked the site. They identified the AGR building. And if I may, Senator, if I could point out something right now, if I may, and we will place this for the record, but this is the point of view. This is from the second floor of the AGR building. This point of view is the point of view where the counter sniper team locally was posted. The gold arrow indicates where the shooter fired from. Looking left, why was the assailant not seen? When we were told that building was going to be covered, that there had been a face-to-face that afternoon, that our team leads met, this was the view. This is what our counter sniper team saw. Shooter, no elbows. You barely make out the crown of his head. Below it, the assailant up prone. When I show you the perspective from what our sniper saw, he's on the downside of that ridged roof. Their perspective from the AGR building, looking out, their area of responsibility, looking left, they should have been able to see. You can see in that photo in Exhibit A, which we will make part of the record and turn over to the committee. And that's why when I laid in that position, I could not, and I will not, and I cannot understand why there was not better coverage, or at least somebody looking at that roof line when that's where they were posted.
There's some people that think it didn't really happen, which of course is completely ridiculous. It did. There are some people that think all kinds of conspiracies went on within the government, which is also false. But could you just tell them what went wrong so they understand?
Yes. No, thank you, Senator. I thought long and hard about this. I think this was a failure of imagination, a failure to imagine that we actually do live in a very dangerous world where people do actually want to do harm to our protectees. I think it was a failure to challenge our own assumptions, the assumptions that we know our partners are going to do everything they can, and they do this every day. But we didn't challenge our own assumptions of, we assume that someone's going to cover that. We assume that there's going to be uniformed presence. We need them, and we need them to be partners with us, and I think we need to be very clear to them, and that may have contributed to this situation.
You said that the Secret Service provides explicit instructions to the locals. Were explicit instructions provided to cover the roof of the AGR building, and locals just not follow it, or were those explicit instructions not provided?
It's my understanding what was communicated is that the locals had a plan and that they had been there before.
Isn't that something that Secret Service should have covered as opposed to delegating it to local law enforcement?
So, Senator, again, this is where I went back to earlier when I said it was a failure to challenge our assumptions. We assumed that the state and locals had it. We made an assumption that there was going to be uniform presence out there, that there would be sufficient eyes to cover that there was going to be counter sniper teams in the AGR building, and I can assure you that we're not going to make that mistake again.
Director Rowe, I would just submit to you that those assumptions can be lethal.
It's my understanding that there was a sniper team assigned to a window with complete overlook, complete view of the roof, the same rooftop, the sloped rooftop where the shots were fired. It's also my understanding, according to some whistleblower accounts, that post was abandoned. What can you tell me about that? Why was it abandoned?
I don't have an answer for you on that, Senator, but it seems to me that if even one of them left, there should have been remaining some additional eyes left in that building.
The head of the Beaver County ESU, Patrick Young, responded by going on a media blitz over the next few days, starting with 3 interviews before the day was over.
And over in Butler, Pennsylvania tonight, local law enforcement is blasting back at comments made today by the acting director of the U.S. Secret Service that took aim at the local agencies.
Why no one was covering that roof line? I think that question is better served to Secret Service of why wasn't anybody covering that roof line. Our guys were assigned specifically by Butler County ESU, and I would assume the Secret Service as to their positions that day. In regards to their positions, they were actually looking into the crowd. That's their pre-designed sectors. They were specifically identified was the entry control point, the area right before the magnetometers, and then the area in front of the stage. And those were the areas that our guys observed.
The impractical decision to look into the crowd that had already been checked for weapons seems to have been made by Butler County and conveyed to Young and his team from Beaver County.
At the time of the shooting, there was a Butler County sniper and a Beaver County sniper that were located there. Somehow that we should have had line of sight on not only the crowd, but the area to the side of the building where the shooter was eventually located. Is kind of ridiculous when you think about trying to do both things. The snipers are concentrated on a very defined mission and looking for very defined threats, and those don't come from them.
It's a moment in history with multiple sides of the story. Looking left, why was the assailant not seen? Rowe Jr. said. But that's not the window Beaver County said they were assigned by Butler from the Secret Service. Rather, they were on the opposite side of the building with no roofline in sight. The Butler ESU sniper and Beaver ESU sniper were at the entire other end of the building in a covert position with a screen in front of them as to not be noticed by people, said Nate Bibble, the Beaver County DA. Rowe's photo was taken from a window they were in, albeit from outside the screen. They were in the second and third windows. Bibble said their role was looking into the secure perimeter, and the assumption is that someone inside the perimeter was looking out. That's where the Secret Service said it messed up, by not being clearer on what was needed in securing different locations. Then add in these local players not having direct access to the Secret Service.
But the Secret Service, he showed a window that was maybe there. Right here,
exactly,
looking out to the roof.
No, that's not where we were assigned. We were assigned over here in those first two windows.
So he's wrong about the assignment.
Absolutely.
I think the biggest thing to not lose sight of is, their job was on being on the outside unsecured perimeter, looking inward at those that had already gone through security.
Doesn't make much sense, does it? And Secret Service did not instruct them to do that. The segment goes on to mislead viewers by using the pictures from the only position from which the roof was not visible.
The local officials told Fox this was the view their two snipers had. You can see here, this is a different warehouse window than the one Rowe referred to on Capitol Hill. And the vantage point is at the ground level looking into the crowd and not onto the roof.
Although the name was redacted when this picture was released by Senator Grassley, this appears to be the location of the sniper who apparently went home long before Trump took the stage, Jason Woods. An unredacted copy of the sniper coverage areas lists Woods in this position. It also reveals the Butler County sniper who was apparently in position during the shooting to be named Murcko, Mike Murcko.
We reached out to the Secret Service about what we're hearing from local officials here in Butler, Pennsylvania, and they referred us back to the acting director's testimony.
Young and Bible also appeared on CNN the next day.
Now, we spoke specifically with some Beaver County officials who led some of the SWAT and sniper teams who were on the site of that Donald Trump rally earlier this month. And they were particularly frustrated at the suggestion by the acting director of the Secret Service that all one of their snipers had to do was simply look to their left, and they might have seen Crooks before this attack happened. Take a listen to their response. One of your snipers looked left. Was it that simple?
It was absolutely not that simple. And the first thing that comes to mind is that we have not had any contact with Secret Service. For the acting director to say that this is where our guys were and this is what they seen is a misrepresentation to the American people. We were never asked what we seen or where we were from Secret Service. I can tell you that the pictures presented is, again, a misrepresentation. Where our people were the far right side of the AGR building. Their views in no way could have seen Crooks without pushing their heads outside the window and looking back.
If it was somehow impossible to see Crooks without leaning out of the window, or impossible to lean out of the window, it was still possible to move down to a closer window and see him from there. An article about this interview added, the snipers had been instructed to be covert, meaning they could not stick their heads out of the window to see Crooks, Young said. The photo the Secret Service used to show its viewpoint was taken through a window that had been secured and closed during the rally, only opened after the shooting had taken place, according to Young. Rowe's photo appears to have been taken from this window, which was not closed during the shooting. This is consistent with Goldinger telling local news earlier that the snipers were in the second and third windows. While the ESU claims the remaining sniper was posted in the second window, this was also open at the time and potentially had a view of Crooks anyway. Same goes for the window someone popped out of a few minutes after the shooting. Bible added that there were screens on the windows where the snipers were stationed in order to keep them hidden. The muzzles of the guns were about a foot behind the window, Young said, and the snipers were about 3 feet back, observing through the window with binoculars. The screens were allowed to be in place because then it allowed us to shoot through, but would not allow people to see in, he said. Greg Smith, who gave this viral interview,
guy on the roof with a rifle, and the police were like, huh, what? You know, like they didn't know what was going on. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him off the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for, 2 or 3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn.
He said that people could be seen inside the second floor. Regardless, screens can easily be removed or penetrated, and the snipers had access to other windows anyway. What they were instructed to do was focus on the secured area in front of you, so before you went in through security, immediately after, before the stage. Watch those individuals, make sure nobody snuck something past security, Bible said. Not to look at the outer unsecured area where Crooks was. So even if that was their job, in that position they couldn't have seen it. They would have had to have been outside that window. Besides the Beaver County DA, the Butler County DA also said the snipers couldn't see the shooter on the roof, telling Fox News they were posted in 2 windows toward the end of the building. They were not posted at a location that would overlook the roof, he continued. Monitoring that roof was not their assignment. 3 days after asking why the local snipers didn't look left, Rowe held a press conference with a more conciliatory tone.
The Secret Service takes full responsibility for the tragic events of July 13th. This was a mission failure. I want to thank our state and local partners. The Secret Service relies on local law enforcement for every protective event. We owe them our thanks, and simply put, we cannot do our jobs without them. And I know how important this relationship is. In no way should any state or local agency supporting us in Butler on July 13th be held responsible for a Secret Service failure.
I have a question about the review that you did, the picture that you showed in the Senate the other day of the vantage point that the local snipers had. How do you know that that's the window that they were actually posted at? Because they're saying that they're on a completely other side of the building.
So thank you for that. So once the FBI had released the Butler Farm Show site, we were able to take custody of it, and we sent the full resources of our Office of Investigations, which included the Forensic Services Division. We did a full site reconstruction, and this is part of our ongoing mission assurance review. And as part of that, that also included the plotting and also trying to identify where not only our personnel were, but also where state and local law enforcement were. How we went back and reconstructed that was based on what we had based on the ops plan, and then also based on what our own folks, as they understood it on the day of.
The Washington Post obtained radio transcripts and explained the indirect communication between the ESU and the Secret Service through 2 command posts. The article began with a radio communication from Greg Nicol that was received by Butler ESU Commander Edward Lenz at 5:42. Just an FYI, we had a younger white male, long hair, lurking around the AGR building. He was viewed with a rangefinder sighting the stage. We lost sight of him. Lenz was in the Butler County Command Post and used his cell phone to relay this information to Pennsylvania State Police Commander Joseph Olea in the Secret Service Command Post, almost 300 yards away. Olea passed this on to his Secret Service counterparts in the same command post, but it didn't stop them from sending Trump on stage. Police lost track of Crooks for 20 minutes after he was seen with the rangefinder, the transcript shows. When he was spotted again, walking toward the area where he would gain access to the rooftop of what local police called the AGR building, an officer mischaracterized where he was headed, directing his colleagues to the wrong side of the building. Nicol was in another window when he spotted Crooks at 6:02. Alright, subject is in between the AGR building. He has a backpack, Nicol said. As Crooks moved to climb onto the roof via an air conditioner, Nicol added, incorrectly, he just went towards the sheets. Lenz once again passed this information on to the Secret Service command post. The message was also passed on to local police units. Lenz radioed Nicol back at 6:07 saying, they should have a fairly good perimeter. If you get another visual, let me know. Less than a minute later, Crooks was spotted again, this time up above. Someone's on the roof, a local officer radioed at 6:08 p.m. I have someone on the roof with white shorts. Lenz, monitoring ESU and police radios, radioed back to clarify. We do not have assets on the roof. That is not us. At 6:09, he called the Secret Service command post for a 3rd time to let them know. But he doesn't appear to have gotten back to Nicol to let him know that the person he's been looking for, the person he took photos of, the person he saw aiming a rangefinder at the stage that he's been speaking to Lenz about over the radio, is likely on the roof right next to him. Why on earth wouldn't Lenz radio back the tactical channel to inform Nicol and Murcko and let them know where Crooks was? He last spoke to Nicol about the shooter at 6:07 and was informed there was someone on the roof at 6:08, and there is no public record of him ever telling his snipers about it. Nicol apparently spent the next 3 minutes away from his post as Crooks moved along the roof and prepared to assassinate Donald Trump. Murcko was apparently on the second floor the whole time and was never told by Lenz to look out the windows. A Secret Service team turned and set up to aim at the building about a minute before the shooting, but Donald Trump was left in harm's way on the stage. Around the same time is when people just outside the open windows shouted about a man on the roof. 30 seconds before the shooting, a police officer tried to climb onto the roof but quickly dropped down. He's armed, the officer said, according to the transcript. I saw him, he's laying down. He's got a long gun, the officer said again into the radio. Lenz didn't call the Secret Service command post back for them to take Trump off the stage. He instead radioed the Butler County Quick Response Force to get them to move all the way over to the AGR building, but it would take them a very long time to get there. They were blocked by fencing, which needed to be smashed into with a vehicle after the shooting. Some found it quicker to drive around the block to get to the AGR complex, while Nicol and Murcko were already there. But they were all on the same radio channel, so these snipers behind the shooter should have heard the message about a long gun on the roof. While Lenz was passing on the directive, he interrupted himself. Shots fired, he said at 6:11 p.m. Around 20 seconds after the shooter was killed by Secret Service snipers, Murcko had finally seen the shooter on the roof and said to Lenz, "Shooter is down, 10 Sierra 3, shooter is down." Lenz replied, "Command copies, shooter down." So to the question of whether the ESU snipers could have stopped the shooter on the roof, the answer is yes.
Bro, before you motherfuckers came up here, I popped my head up there like an idiot by myself, dude. He turned around, I fucking dropped, and I started fucking...
That's how they got somebody up here. I thought somebody was up here. I put my head up here. If he was up here, I'd been fucking toast.
Dude, that's how I was fucking calling out, bro. Fucking on top of the roof, fucking... Are we on the same frequency?
I fucking told them they need to post the guys fucking over here. I told them that the Secret Service. I told them that fucking Tuesday. I told them to post fucking guys over here.
I thought you were on the roof. I thought it was you.
What?
I thought you guys were on the roof.
No, we're inside.
Alpha 1, Bravo 1. Higgins.
The fuck?
I told them to post fucking guys over here.
I wasn't even concerned about it because I thought someone was on the roof. I thought that's how they count out when you lose a guy walking back there.
They were on the roof. They were inside.
Why were we not on the roof?
Because it's football from us. You need a guy somewhere over on the left side.
Why weren't we?
Because I thought we were going to post guys over here. I talked to the Secret Service guys. They're like, yeah, no problem. We're going to post guys over here. Fuck. Who was over here? Do you know?
Who was where? Through the fence.
Was there?
A guy back there.
I was against the fence right there.
You were fence right there.
And then Butler ESU guy was right there.
Was there a guy over, like, was there one of your guys, or was there a Secret Service guy over here?
So I saw everyone start surrounding the building.
No, before, at the start of this whole shit.
Are we still securing inside? Anybody inside? Are we still securing inside?
I fucking told the Secret Service, post a fucking guy over here.
This side.
I told him that fucking at the meeting on Tuesday.
I'd say this is a fuck up.
Sorry, not sure which gas company.
Somebody fucked up.
Them and have them respond.
We're on the roof. The stage is right there.
Affirmative.
They were on the second floor inside.
So I'll probably have to be brief, but I'm way down here and I'm seeing them climb on that roof. Where's the roof at? Over here. I've seen them climb up one of these two peaks up on the edge. PSP starts rolling this way through grass. He comes up and he disappears between two buildings. PSP doesn't look. I thought he was talking because I'm still here.
I see where the car's at. Yeah.
No, I'm still here. And PSP comes running and says, I can't find him. I say, and I yell, I say, hey, I got a fat ass ain't coming from this building. And Dave Tedeschi and Colin come running around. And they got up on there and said, long gun. Like, fuck.
We'll just leave the alert.
Who shot him? Who shot him? Was it our guys?
Whoever probably did the circle in the front because to shoot into the crowd, he had to be, but he had to be back far enough to see. So I don't know what. I mean, they didn't very much. When I see someone run across the roof, they probably should have yanked Trump right off the stage.
Yeah?
Six witnesses, possibly one associate and CSPs with them.
Are you recording? Yeah.
Actual command control.
I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there? All right, so if you go to that window that's open and yell for Greg, that's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book back down and then lost sight of him.
Murcko appears on police dashcam 80 minutes after the shooting, walking in and out of the building the shooter fired from. At one point, he walks with a Secret Service agent. He continues walking in and out of the building, using his phone throughout. He's also a police officer from Jackson Township, which is one of the places Butler County ESU draws members from. This is likely his vehicle in the AGR car park, one of only a few. He continues using his phone while he waits for his partner, Nicol, to exit the building, and they both leave together. Senator Grassley wrote to Acting Director Rowe to complain about the photo he presented earlier. As part of my ongoing investigation into the attempted assassination, my investigative staff communicated with local law enforcement, to include counter-snipers who were on site that day. Local law enforcement dispute the angle of the picture that you provided during your testimony, stating that the picture you provided neither accurately depicts their line of sight and coverage area from their position in the building, nor their physical placement within the building. Local law enforcement assert their true physical location was the following. The picture shows two windows down the end of one side, but the letter goes on to show Beaver County ESU pictures from around the corner, and claims this to be their true line of sight. Grassley also mentioned the footage shown earlier of Patrolman Blasco saying he told the Secret Service to post guys by the AGR complex, and asked about the Tuesday meeting. Blasco is also the assistant team leader of the sniper unit with Butler County ESU. Grassley also asked an important question. Describe in detail how the Beaver County and Butler County counter-sniper teams were assigned to their positions on the second floor of the AGR complex and their respective coverage areas. Did the Secret Service assign or approve the location of the counter-snipers in the AGR complex? It's unclear what response, if any, Grassley got, but it appears the exact positions and coverage areas were assigned by Butler County ESU. CNN reported, following a general briefing that morning by a law enforcement official from Butler County, where the rally was being held, Nicol said he and other snipers were assigned to be inside the AGR building and directed to several windows on the second floor with a view of the entry area to the rally grounds and the stage where Trump would speak. Remember, a red combine obstructed the view of the stage from the end windows they were allegedly assigned to, but not from this window. A Butler sniper leader who met Nicol and his partners at the AGR building told them their mission was to look out those windows and scan the area for threats, Nicol said. They were instructed to remain covert. They set up their rifles on tripods so that the barrels were a foot or two inside the open windows to prevent them from being seen from outside. After the article mentions Nicol's radio call about someone with a rangefinder, it continues, as the clock ticked toward Trump taking the stage, Nicol went from window to window on the second floor of the AGR building looking for the kid and wondering what was taking so long for help to arrive. I don't see any patrolmen or anybody outside looking for him, he told CNN. It's like, what is going on here? Just after 6 p.m, Nicol, looking out a window on the northwest side of the building, spotted Crooks again. This time the young man was running and carrying a black backpack. Instinctively, Nicol left his second floor post and bounded down the stairs in an attempt to keep eyes on the suspect who seemed to be coming and going and disappearing. When he pushed open the door, the kid was nowhere to be seen. Just then, two police officers pulled up outside AGR and Nicol shouted to them about where he'd last seen the suspect. The officers took off on foot in opposite directions around the sprawling AGR complex. Secret Service directors, the Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner, and lawmakers criticised local law enforcement's actions during several high-profile congressional hearings. They said they assumed securing the AGR complex had been the responsibility of the local cops and falsely suggested officers didn't want to be on the roof because of the heat that day. They claimed Nicol had abandoned his post and that the snipers inside the AGR building could have seen Crooks if they had been more vigilant. The accusations prompted Young and the Beaver County District Attorney, Nate Bible, to come to their officer's defence. In a July interview with ABC, they first shared some of their frustrations about the poor planning and siloed communications in the lead up to and during the event. In interviews with CNN, Nicol and Woods said they had expected more thorough instructions from the Secret Service and complained about a lack of clarity about the full security plan. Another source of frustration revolved around plans for the AGR site itself, located outside of the perimeter established by the Secret Service. Nicol said he and Woods assumed patrol officers would protect access to the building because, as snipers inside, they would not be able to see or immediately follow someone close to the building. But that didn't happen. Congressman Clay Higgins from the House Task Force investigating the assassination attempt released his preliminary investigative report on August 15. He was greatly assisted by Edward Lenz. The 6-page report includes the following claims. The Secret Service didn't pick up radios that were set aside for them. Crooks fired 8 shots before being wounded by a 9th shot from the ground, followed by a kill shot around the mouth from the Southern Secret Service counter-sniper team. His body was released and cremated 10 days after the shooting. Lenz had nothing to hide, and the ESU was very professionally deployed and commanded on the day of the rally, and the Butler County ESU performed quite well under the circumstances. The only hint of the snipers behind the shooter was this. I recreated every step of the county tactical team that was inside and every movement of Crooks outside, examined every window, etc. There was no mention of them being able to see the shooter from many of those windows. The report was submitted to the task force chairman Mike Kelly, who gave an interview the day after its public release.
2 weeks ago, the Secret Service acting director, he testified before Congress and made at least 3 serious allegations that disparaged the competence and reputations of local law enforcement. Were you surprised he was so forceful in his denunciation when he talked about those snipers inside and their line of sight of Thomas Crooks?
Well, I was disappointed, first of all, that somebody in that position would go ahead and make this supposition and say, well, here's the problem, the local guys didn't do their job. And then it comes back to me is I know a lot of those local guys, I know what they take pride in, and I know that they took personal time that day to be there to help. And I hold these guys in the highest esteem because of what they do.
So well, were you surprised how hard he was?
Absolutely, absolutely, because he's making accusations. And he wasn't the head of the Secret Service whenever this was all laid out.
The Secret Service talked about, we assumed there was coverage on the AGR complex. Butler Township telling me that they told the Secret Service when they asked for coverage that they didn't have the manpower to cover that building.
4 days after the shooting, the Washington Post reported that Richard Goldinger said the Secret Service was informed that the local police department did not have manpower to assist with securing that building. The Post said this account was confirmed by Secret Service spokesman Guglielmi. Guglielmi said the proposal to station a patrol car and officer outside the AGR International Building Complex had been part of the Secret Service's advanced planning for securing the prominent structure.
So why would he be assuming? Why would there be assumptions when, for example, Butler Township said, we don't have the manpower, we're doing traffic?
The basics of anything, when you're in a position of authority, you never assume anything.
These assumptions, do you think the locals were lying, or who do you think is not telling the most accurate picture?
I think the local law enforcement assumed that they were working with professionals that would actually be able to direct them where they should be, when they should be there, and communicate with them constantly.
Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe showed the picture with the camera outside of that window where the local snipers had been positioned. Why do you think he showed that picture?
I have no idea why he did that. I wasn't there for his questioning period, but again, so Inspector Rowe was an add-on after the fact. So I don't know what was his experience before then. Had he ever really had these experiences before where he had to be the spokesperson?
He talked about, though, their line of sight.
Yes.
And why perhaps they could have seen Thomas Crooks. Do you think that was fair?
Well, I think it's fair to look at what happened. We have all kind of footage right now. Apparently, the Secret Service were the only people that did not see Crooks on that roof because people at the fair that day kept pointing and screaming that he's on the roof, he's on the roof.
Senator Grassley said these are the pictures. This is where they say they were, behind the windows. And he said this is actually where the snipers were, but it was very unfair, some of the locals feel, that you said that we would have had a line of sight, and by you showing the roof picture, that was unfair.
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. There's more of this to come out, and we'll do the deep dive on it. I want to get away from who made there was a lot of mistakes made that day, but it was made by the people who were running the program. Local law enforcement came to help. But I've sat with Mr. Lenz. Mr. Lenz, right off the bat, he was so disturbed by what happened and so shaken by it because he felt there should have been something happened before this. This never should have happened. He was deeply, deeply wounded by the fact that this was a failure and it never should have happened.
Do you know who decided to not post someone on the roof? Because as far as you know, you had told me earlier, was anyone posted on that roof?
I didn't realize that there had been personnel up there. I actually went into the AGR building to see what happened. I went in with Homeland Security about a week after everything had taken place. The window that was broken where they supposedly, we had people, was broken and it hadn't been fixed yet where they could shut it. And the thing kept going. It was so hot that day that they had to come away from the roof. It was just too hot. I guess it was too hot, but I don't know because I wasn't there in that day and that time.
But
so
are people telling you that someone was supposed to be posted on the roof?
well, my understanding was there were people that were there within eyesight of the roof. You'd almost have to go to that position and you can look right out that window and you can say, I can see exactly where that young man was.
The Comperatore family was excited to be going to their first Trump rally. Our Pittsburgh Action News 4 photographer captured this video of the family on the bleachers behind former President Trump before the shots rang out. Moments after this video was taken, Corey Comperatore would lose his life protecting his family.
When I turned is whenever he fell down, and that's when I started screaming, and I was instantly, like, I was trying to keep him from bleeding.
I started screaming, but in my head I kept saying, wake up, like this is a dream, wake up. And then you realize it's not a dream, and you feel like your whole world is just over.
At 16 years old, he became a volunteer firefighter and eventually a fire chief. Corey's firefighter gear was displayed at the Republican National Convention, which was a special honor.
That was an honor. That was a big honor. Yeah, that was a big honor. I'll tell you why. All day at the rally, my husband kept saying, he's going to call me up on stage. You're going to hear him. He's going to say, Corey, come on up here. Corey, get up here. He was just joking, you know, obviously, but he kept saying that. You're going to get up. You know, he's going to call me up on stage. And we were all like, there's his moment. He's up on stage.
As his wife and daughters talked exclusively with me about that tragic day, they told me they're angry and they have so many questions. They say with all the security there that day, they don't know how this could have happened.
How do you think this happened? How do you think that this was even able to happen?
You tell me. Because it could have saved my husband's life. You know, I don't understand where the mix-up was from the messaging. It was a phone call or a message. Like, how hard was it to take him out? There's a guy on the roof with a gun. How hard was it to get him subdued? You know, the Secret Service should have had people on that building. Plain and simple. That building should have been covered. They failed. It falls on them.
I'm very angry for us, but I'm angry for my dad because he had so much left to live for. He had so much left to experience, and he was looking forward to all of that, and I'm angry that he will never get to experience it. So I want justice for my dad, and I will fight until the day I die for my dad.
I'm angry. I'm honestly just disgusted at the fact that we don't have answers and that people are just not answering the questions.
Helen vows to never give up until she gets answers about the circumstances that took her husband's life.
But I know he would want me to get to the bottom of it. I know he would.
To get answers to what happened, she's hired an attorney to help her find answers and get justice.
I want justice for my husband, and I'm going to get it.
They specifically want answers from security at the rally.
I just want them to know that I really think my dad's blood is on their hands, and I hope they wake up every day thinking about what they took from our family, because we have to wake up every day and see that image of our father in our head, and no child should ever have to see that.
The FBI released information about the shooter's weapon. Thomas Crooks' rifle broken down as was likely done for transport, and the backpack recovered on site. 2 improvised explosive devices as initially discovered in Thomas Crooks' car trunk. The receiver for remote detonation was in the off position. Devices had several problems in the way they were constructed. The air conditioning unit Thomas Crooks used to access the roof of the AGR building. The subject accessed the roof by climbing on the tan machine on the far right of the photo. On July 12, during a 6-hour walkthrough, the Secret Service was still discussing ways to prevent the warehouses from being accessed by the public, including the possibility of adding a police patrol or parking farm equipment nearby. Despite all the talk, the warehouses were left unguarded. The planning started in earnest on July 8, a Monday, when officials from the Secret Service and local agencies met at an emergency services building in Allegheny County, convened by Timothy Burke, the agency's special agent in charge in Pittsburgh. Throughout the week, Secret Service agents contacted the local agencies individually or in small groups as plans evolved. Some provided specific information about assignments, others offered little guidance. On Tuesday, the agency's lead advance agent, Meredith Bank, asked a local SWAT commander whether his team could supply 2 snipers. Ed Lenz, the commander of that team, the Butler County Emergency Services Unit, or ESU, said in an interview that Miss Bank did not explain what the agency wanted these snipers to do or where they should be posted. There was really no direction, Mr. Lenz said. Mr. Lenz wrote an email to the Butler County District Attorney describing the assignment as he interpreted it. The team snipers, Mr. Lenz wrote, would provide overwatch for the rally and would work in conjunction with the Secret Service counter-sniper unit. The local snipers decided for themselves the optimal places from which to watch the crowd inside the fenced-in security zone, Mr. Lenz said. One was from the second-floor windows of one of the AGR warehouses. The sniper's position did not afford a view of the warehouse roof from which Mr. Crooks would eventually fire his shots. By July 11, 2 days before the rally, some state and local agencies recognised that the warehouses could be a problem, as the closest one was outside the security perimeter but less than 500 feet from the stage. During small group walkthroughs of the site, different local partners raised their concerns, but they said the Secret Service gave contradictory answers. In one group, a senior Pennsylvania State Police major asked who had responsibility for the buildings. Several Secret Service agents answered that the Butler County Emergency Services Unit was on the hook for that role. Christopher Paris, the Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner, testified to Congress in July. In closed-door testimony in late August, John Marciniak, the Secret Service's lead counter-sniper at the rally, confirmed to Senate staff that this was the plan. The ESU would handle it, a person familiar with the testimony said. Mr. Lenz has vehemently disputed this characterization. He cited instances in which his team members discussed their understanding with the Secret Service, including in their own small group discussions with Mr. Marciniak on July 11. No one ever suggested those plans should change, Mr. Lenz said. If they said, hey, we want you to cover the roof of the AGR building, we would have picked a different location, focusing on that, Mr. Lenz said. During the walkthrough, which Mr. Lenz described as quite disorganised, one of the Butler team members, Drew Blasco, warned 2 Secret Service side agents, Myosity Perez and Dana Dubray, that the local police could not add more patrol cars to monitor the area around the warehouse during the rally, Mr. Lenz said. But the agents assured them that the Secret Service would cover them. The local officers were not satisfied and asked to have the area locked down to keep the public away, Mr. Lenz said. A lawyer for Ms. Perez, Larry Berger, said he could not speak to the details of that conversation, but he said the record showed otherwise. Based on plans and documents created before the event, he said, the local police were specifically assigned to cover the AGR building and its roof. He could not point the times to a document that shows this. A lawyer for Mr. Bray, Mark S. Zaid, said his client did not recall speaking to Mr. Blasco, or even knowing who he was.
The Secret Service did not give clear guidance or direction to our local law enforcement partners. There were communication deficiencies between law enforcement personnel at the site.
Congress went on to provide a large number of reports, interviews and hearings that we can draw from for a comprehensive account of the failures that allowed the shooting to happen. On September 26, local law enforcement testified before a House of Representatives task force hearing.
I can't tell you when I talk to local law enforcement how much I appreciate what you all did that day, and today is your day to come forward with your testimony. These men answered a call to play a role protecting the public and our political process, even though providing security at a political rally is not their usual line of work.
The day before, the Senate released its interim report. This was soon accompanied by transcripts of 12 interviews with Secret Service personnel the Senate conducted during its investigation. In October, the DHS released a report and the House Task Force released its interim report. In December, Task Force member Clay Higgins released his own report, and the acting Secret Service Director Rowe testified before the task force just before they released their final report.
The mission assurance inquiry identified failures by multiple employees that warrant disciplinary action. There will be accountability, and that accountability is occurring. I personally carry the weight of knowing that we almost lost a protectee, and our failure cost a father and husband his life.
The task force released its final report a few days later. Like the earlier Senate report, they also released transcripts of interviews conducted during the investigation, this time including local law enforcement, such as the ESU snipers in the AGR building, along with Secret Service personnel. They say they released all of the 46 interviews they conducted, but only 45 are available. The missing interview is the one with Butler ESU Commander Edward Lenz, who failed to relay information about someone on the roof to snipers nearby. There'll be more on this later. In July 2025, 1 year after the shooting, Senator Grassley released a report and the Senate released its final report, along with 5 more transcribed Secret Service interviews, as well as disciplinary documents. By combing through this huge amount of information, combined with raw footage and radio transmissions, the rest of this series will give a detailed picture of everything that happened and everything that went wrong. The second part of this series will focus on the security failures in planning, and the third part will be a comprehensive timeline of the events of July 13.